Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got an 8-game slate here for you guys on a Monday, a couple game videos, and our player props as we're bringing you each and every weekday. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. In this one, we're taking a look at the Suns playing host to the Raptors. Feels like the Raptors have been on the road for the last 3 weeks of the season. Hopefully they're wrapping that up soon. Also, like I said, have our player props and another game video up for you. So continue to follow along. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where you can check out all of our great written content up there and use our odds finder tool. That's where we list out all the options for you guys in terms of the U.S. sportsbooks, giving you guys NBA bets. You can make sure you're getting the best odds available to you. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 8-game slate and then talk Suns and Raptors.
Yeah, first game, we got Philly hosting Orlando at -9.5, but Embiid and Harden, no props up yet, so I don't know if they might rest somebody in that matchup. The Lakers are resting AD and LeBron, so they're +9 at Brooklyn. That game opened as a pick'em, and now they're quite sizable underdogs. The Warriors are -5 at OKC. Despite their road troubles there. Game totals 242. We got a 241 total in San Antonio with the Wizards visiting +6 spread there for the Spurs. The other game we break down, Kings -1 at Wolves, 237 total. Pistons are +8.5 at Mavs with Luka questionable. The Hawks are +2 at the Blazers, who are struggling. And then we've got Raptors +1.5 at Suns. Total down to 220.5. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the Raptors had a 3-game roadie, got home for 2. Now this is game 4 of a 7-game roadie. And they have not been very good on the road. But, I mean, they've covered when it's a larger spread. But, I mean, this is barely a spread at all. And we did, I guess I'll open by talking about our Friday debate, whether the Warriors would pull away from them at home, and they did. Shout out White Dante DiVincenzo with the career-high 11 dimes, giving them that extra spark. But, I mean, that's definitely skewed by the fact that OG Anunoby played 10 minutes and then got hurt again. And their defense is just so much worse without him. I mean, he is top 5 defensive player of the year candidate. They allow 126 without him versus 114 with him. And 3 more 3-pointers per game, which, you know, Phoenix is not the most 3-heavy team, but they do have Cam Johnson back, and he's a vital floor stretcher for them, especially with Jay Crowder sitting out. They need that stretch 4, and you know, with him back for 5 games, they're scoring 5 more points per game. Their offensive rating is 4 points higher in the games he's played. And, of course, CP3 is back as well, which kind of surprisingly makes us throw the brakes on an over here because their pace is 4 possessions slower with CP3, and their defense is much better because, you know, holding people accountable, coach on the floor, whatever you want to say. These teams have tended to go under and played pretty slow when they meet. Toronto's done a good job defending Phoenix, although they haven't had both CP3 and Book for recent meetings. I mean, they don't again tonight, of course. Booker's still out. So gone under in 6 of the last 9 here. It's been bet down a little bit. I would lean towards over, if anything, though, because of Toronto's struggles. On the road defensively, is basically their struggles without OG. But an interesting piece to watch here is the rebounding battle. And with OG out, the guy who's in is Precious Achiuwa, and he's just a monster on the glass. It also seems to have freed up Siakam a little bit to play more of that 3 role if you want to shift Scotty Barnes up to the 4. And Siakam's had a very high usage rate in his last 4. Might look at 23.5 points for him in this matchup, even though, you know, he might see some of Mikal Bridges. I think just the volume and the minutes played will probably get him enough points here. But I think at home, you know, Phoenix is still looking pretty good. The fact that they dropped that game against the Mavs when Luka went out is kind of an outlier. I mean, you would expect them to handle the Mavs without Luka, but it was just kind of a wrench thrown in when he gets hurt 3 minutes in. Yeah. And then Spencer Dinwiddie has the game of his life. You know, weird stuff happens when stars are out in the NBA sometimes. But otherwise, yeah, they've been very sharp since CP3 came back and Cam Johnson came back. Ayton been back too. So I think we're going back to them. They're kind of 1-1 since we've been like take Phoenix at home. They're rounding back into form, and hopefully we get to 2-1 here in terms of that pick.
Yeah, it was a weird game, man. I mean, Luka is a sun that the game orbits around. So as soon as he's out of it, the whole ecosystem is just totally different. They played a zone, did the Suns, in that game that was like a trapping zone where you really only trap Luka, but it's just get the ball out of Luka's hands. That's the game plan. And as soon as he's out, it's like, all right, Spencer Dinwiddie's carving you up in the zone that you have because you're not really treating him the same way, but you're still playing a zone. It was just all weird. Monty Williams hasn't looked that great this season, but whatever. That's a different story. This is a time, I mean, just as an indicator, like the next game where Utah had their game plan ready at home versus Dallas without Luka, knowing ahead of time there's no Luka, they won by 10 pretty handily, and they would have won by more if they didn't let them back a little bit at the end of the game. So that's just a little bit of a testament to how the weirdness that was that Mavs game when Luka, goes out in the first like 3 minutes of the game. So I think the key though here is the injury to OG Anunoby, and I think it's got to be talked about because of the way that this Phoenix team has been playing in the last roughly 6, which is kind of what we're talking about as a barometer. Cam's been back for 5 of those 6. Chris Paul's been back for 4 of those 6. Ayton's been back at least for 3 of those 6 games. So like at least like they're rounding into health more so than they were. And it really is the way that they've been winning and really the way they've been scoring. Same way they always do. Like this team is what it is at this point, especially when Chris Paul is out there. 4th most points per game from 2-point mid-range. Toronto's allowing the 4th highest opponent field goal percentage on the road this season. The 7th most 3-pointers made as well, which is like a big deal with Chris Paul out there finding guys for 3. Mikal Bridges can't really set himself up for 3. Torrey Craig can't really set himself up for 3. Cam Johnson's finally back. So it all adds up to them making the 7th most threes. And without OG Anunoby, we saw what the Dubs did to them, especially in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Where they just made a barrage of threes, and a lot of them assisted as well, which is another problem when OG's out there. The amount of assists that they allow goes way up as well for the Raptors. So you look at the second chance points is a big thing for Phoenix with Ayton and especially Bridges as well, crashing the glass. But Toronto limits definitely second chance points. They limit points in the paint. They limit points off turnovers because Toronto's been a lot more what am I trying to say here? They've been a lot more disciplined on the road than they were at the very beginning of the season. And then everything that like Toronto is a little bit worse at on defense is the things that Phoenix doesn't do well. So I'm not really I don't want to bet on a total, I guess is all I'm saying in terms of the way that these teams match up. But I do like Phoenix to be able to handle this team without OG, just like I said, mostly because of the lack of 3-point shooting and the defensive, the perimeter on the defense at this point. I just don't trust them. And the way that, like you said, the way that this game sort of we see this going is just more Chris Paul stuff, a really slow pace, 105 defensive rating over their last 6 with that, roughly 95.5 pace when Paul's out there. So even though Cam Johnson's back, it opens up the offense a ton, gives you a big rebounding scorer who can shoot. The defense and the discipline that they've been playing in the half court and with the slow pace is really what I look at as like the defining factor of this game. And the fact that Toronto is the worst half court offense, we'll say it again, in the league because of that lack of 3-point shooting. Yeah, they're going to need Precious Achiuwa to get like 10 second chance points on his own really to have a chance in this one. So I just think that the sort of need the things that Toronto needs to do to win is a lot more extreme at this point because of the lack of ways that they have to score, especially against one of the best half court defenses in the league that they are every season now in the Suns.
Yeah, and the Suns are 5th denying fast break points, always key with the Raptors. Limiting turnovers is always key as well, and with Chris Paul out there, you don't expect as many turnovers. Yeah, you said. I mean, the Raptors are bad in these margins, even with OG, in terms of giving up assisted field goals, in terms of giving up 2-point percentage. You saw the Warriors, with their half-court offense kind of carve them up. A defensive rating of 121 or higher in 5 of the last 7 road games here for the Raptors. So I think there's something to be said for Phoenix going over their team total here, and not necessarily trusting the Raptors as much. But, I think there's a lot of ways to exploit that defense, especially, I talk about what playing Precious might do to open things up for Siakam on offense, but then you're just a little bit too big, I think, and a little bit too slow against the Suns on the other end. And CP3 knows how to identify those matchups and exploit them.
Yeah, it's all pointing towards Suns at this point, especially with their ability to game plan for this team playing with who they know who's in the lineup at this point for Toronto, as opposed to the way that weird Mavs game went. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. Also got another game video and our player props up for you to start the week. So until we see you next, happy betting.